Thank you guys all for joining us today. We're very excited to be part of this workshop and part of the whole conference. We think there's a lot of really great information and potential to what everybody's Google My Business could be doing. And what we really love to be able to take today is take all your potential of your GMB and show everybody what happens when you start tracking the data and what you can see when you start tracking your data in Google Analytics. So that's where this whole idea of unlocking your Google My Business potential comes from. Before we get into all the fun nuts and bolts, a little bit about myself. My name is Colleen. I have been with Syncro since 2013, which was many, many moons ago. I've been in digital retailing. This is probably old, and it's probably almost 20 years now, and done a little bit of everything. Love it. Currently, I'm working as the product manager for business intelligence, which is a BI-related function of looking at data reporting and storytelling, which is really where I get excitement. If you guys have ever listened to me before, I can get really excited about all of the data and really about taking all of your Google potential and just using it for the dealership. Specifically, what gives us really kind of that street cred for being up here to talk about data, part of my function as the product manager for business intelligence is that I manage the Google Analytics installs for about 7,000 websites. So good, bad, ugly, I have seen all the data, I live it, I breathe it, I think about it way too much, and I'm very excited about making it something everybody can access and everybody can have something for.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Doherty. I'm also very excited to be here with Colleen. When she invited me, how could I say no? I'm the product marketing manager for the earned marketing department, which includes SEO, social media and reputation management, DMS email marketing. And then I'm also the product marketing manager for our strategy and performance website performance managers. So like I said, I'm really excited to be here. I have about 10 years of experience in digital marketing, but this is my first conference engagement with Syncro.
So to dive into what we're going to be looking at today, because everybody I know has gone through Brian's Google My Business Bootcamp, this is kind of that 201 next steps to it. What are all those new fancy pieces? What can we take potential of? What can we do anything with? And then Anna's going to talk a lot about how to really take Google My Business from that thing in the search results into really something that can be a strong marketing channel.
Okay, so let's start with what's new in Google My Business. Colleen's going to go into further detail about this particular update later in the presentation. She has some hot takes that you're going to absolutely love to hear about. But Google recently introduced this feature that they're beta testing. It's not available in all Google My Business profiles yet, but it is a call tracking, call history feature. It's going to be in its own tab in your Google My Business. The data will only be available in the Google My Business app. It won't be available on the desktop, which many of you probably have your own feelings about that. But what it will do is track incoming calls to your Google My Business profile. Both missed calls and answered calls will be logged there in the insights. We have some reservations about this, which we'll talk about later, but it could be an option for you if you're interested in learning more about who's calling your business and what you can do with that information. Next slide, please. Another thing that's new with Google My Business is the ability to have video appointments. So obviously this is a change because of COVID. We need more opportunities for people to meet each other, for small businesses, local businesses to meet face-to-face with customers who can't come into their local brick and mortar perhaps. So for dealerships, this is interesting because if you already have a relationship with one of these reserved with Google partners like Appointly or another appointment-based partner, you may be able to use this for video calls. So things like setting up service appointments or talking through a potential sale. Those are possibly things you could explore with this new feature. It just matters. It just depends on if you have this relationship already or if you understand how you would want to run a video appointment within your dealership. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last feature we wanted to talk about today was the Google Guarantee Badge. This is interesting because the list of potential local businesses that can take advantage of this new badge is in flux. It seems to be changing. So for a short period of time, maybe a week or two, auto repair was on that list, but it has since been removed. So we want to keep an eye on this. But what it is for $50 a month, and you have to go through a series of criteria, Google will choose a selected group of businesses within their local search and give them a Google guaranteed badge. So this is kind of Google's dealing with advertising a little bit on the profile. We're not sure when auto dealers will have this functionality, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on, especially for your auto repair. This could be something that you could utilize to help you, stay top of mind in search and show that Google cares about your business in particular. Next slide, please. Okay, so now that we've got all the little updates out of the way, the new stuff, let's talk about using Google My Business as part of your full marketing plan. So a lot of people, care about advertising or what they put on their website or, how they deal with search engine optimization. But do you ever really think about Google My Business as part of a strategy? Sometimes you'll think of it as just a business listing or something that you update your hours and directions on. But there's a lot of potential here. And so we put together a few strategies that we think you could utilize with GMB if you're not already utilizing them today. Thankfully, Google My Business as a profile is a channel that checks a lot of boxes. Next slide. It shows you, it is the intersection of SEO, social media, digital retailing, merchandising, and reputation management. So in one little place, you can accomplish a lot. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, now when we talk about strategies on Google My Business, I'm going to take some common dealership strategies that you might be employing right now and show you how you can take Google My Business into your marketing plan and use it to kind of round out how you're talking about these different strategies in different channels like advertising and website and SEO. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, one of our favorite ones, right? You've got a Sonic, you've got a Trax on your lot, and you are about to have a birthday with this vehicle. It's a 2020, and we're heading into 2021, and this thing is just sitting on your lot. Dealers love the ability to move a vehicle off before you start having to pay those lot fees for it. Let's go to the next slide, please. So in addition to maybe doing a display ad that goes to that VDP or some dedicated landing page on your website that has a VSR with all those models on it that are, about to have a birthday, let's think about how we can use Google My Business to highlight those inventory pieces and move them off your lot faster. So in this case, I've pulled out a few features on Google My Business that you could utilize for this purpose. For the inventory carousel, if you click next, you can use both the products feature in Google My Business to highlight specific VINs that are about to have a birthday. And then you can also create categories from those highlighted products that will stay on your Google My Business profile and show up in the local search results. So for instance, in this case, trucks, right? Let's say you have Silverados that are about to have birthdays and you got to move them. You can give them special pricing. You can do your regular, birthday model strategy and then highlight those VINs directly on the search results through these two features. I would also include posts as a great way to get eyes on specific VINs. But again, posts are a little bit, shorter term, and these are longer term abilities for you to showcase in the search results. I would say it's important if you do use this feature to keep an eye on those VINs. As they move off your lot, you want to make sure you're updating your inventory on your Google My Business so you don't have dead links or things just sitting there that aren't the right price or have moved off your website. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so posts, another really, really good way to showcase specific inventory that you want to move. In this case, you got to move that Spark. You give it a really good price, great rebate availability. You can highlight all of that right there on your post, and you can see there's a little date there that shows some immediate call to action because people know this expires. So some good content. Next slide. All right, so another strategy is common right now, especially, you know, with the lack of new inventory availability, is both soliciting more used vehicles and then also moving your used inventory quickly. So this is obviously an extremely popular strategy. Here's some ways you can use Google My Business in order to highlight this on your search results. Next slide, please. So again, like we talked about, choosing some VINs, choosing some VSRs, things that showcase that used inventory, and creating both product listings and categories. Like you can see here, pre-owned vehicles is the category that's highlighted here, and then you can see some examples of pre-owned vehicles in the products carousel. These are great ways to get eyes on those inventory vehicles, get people to call you directly from your Google My Business, to land on the VDP directly from Google My Business. And Colleen will show you later in this presentation how to track all that so you know if you're being successful. Another thing to use is the posts. Again, if you go to the next slide, you can use your trade-in value feature on your website. You can link directly to it from your post in Google My Business. Really showcase that. You can show up a lot in local search for things like used vehicles for posts like this. And then another feature I would recommend you look into is if you've attended one of Brian Pash's boot camps, you know, department listings are a huge opportunity for dealers. You're most likely already setting up a parts and or service department listing. I would encourage you to look into possibly setting up a used listing. If you have a used vehicle department at your dealership, it's worth looking into setting it up as part of your department listings, and then it has its own hours, it has its own contact information, and then you can also do all of these feature strategies we've just talked about on its own listing. So that way you're separating out your new sales and your used sales, so you have more opportunities to show up for local searches for used vehicles if it has its own dedicated department listing. Next slide, please. All right, and then the last strategy I really want to make sure we hammer home is that Google My Business is one of the best ways to help you dominate the entire search result. And what I mean by that is, let's say someone's searching Chevy dealer near me. What do you want to accomplish? You want to, 1, show up number 1 in the local map pack, right? You want to, 2, show up number 1 in the straight up search results listings. 3, you want your advertising to be successful and also be the first thing that people see in the ad pack. And 4, you want your Google My Business profile, if possible, to be the thing that dominates the page. So if you click to the next slide, if you are doing a really good job of beating out your competitors, you can make your Google My Business profile the only thing that shows up, so that you can beat out your competitors on the map pack. Here's one way to help your profile trigger more often. If you see people asking questions on your listing, answer them. If you can trigger 3 answers, you're more likely to show up. So I would say seed some questions within your department if you can. You know, ask a question on your listing. That's maybe not very transparent, but it's a thing that we recommend. Just getting some really good questions out there and making sure they're answered so people can see those answers right on the search results. And also recommend posts, because posts are awesome content that is short-lived, but it shows Google that you care about the listing and that you're feeding fresh content into it. And then, like we talked about, the inventory and the categories, make sure you're exploiting them for the strategies that you care about, like used vehicles and new inventory that you want to move. Colleen, did you have anything else you wanted to add to this one?
I think the Q&A is also the one place where people, if they're angry, will leave a scathing review. I don't know if you bring up your dealership listing right now, to open up a new tab, look for your Google, like search your dealer name and see if you have any Q&As in there, and if they're good, bad, indifferent. So many times people will leave those scathing, angry reviews and you have no idea they're sitting there. So I'll be curious in the Q&A section if people can tell me how many Q&As they've had, what is the best kind of response and things like that they've seen.
Yep, exactly. They're pesky about that. Sometimes they can hide under the radar.
Angry people will leave their anger anywhere.
You know it. Okay, next slide. I think we got one more little piece of content here. Yeah, so when we talk about dominating the search results, just like I said, you want to be in that top of that map pack, and your Google My Business is the best way to do it. It's the #1 search signal that determines who shows up #1 in the map pack. All right, great.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna, so much. So the other part that we hear all the time about Google My Business is if it's really worth it. I have all these things. Anna's just talked about all these great strategies, but it's hard to figure out and to really say in this attribution model and like in this way of trying to figure out all of the 15 different activities, which are sticking to the wall and which are sliding off. This is the key to understanding what Google My Business strategies are going to stick to the wall and what are going to be the things that are going to show you how to track and how to really attribute the work you're doing to your website activity, your engagement, as well as your conversions. So we're going to dive all into the different places you find that data. First and foremost is kind of to think about it in parallel to what Google Ads has. For Google Ads, you have all of your impression data, which is that upstream, how many times the ad was seen, how many times it got clicked on, the share of that. And then you have your downstream, which is the clicks to the website and everything they did after that. Google My Business has the same exact kind of structure and layout. Upstream is going to be all of the insights data that the Google My Business interface actually provides. And that's the how many times did your listing show up. Downstream is then going to be all of your Google Analytics data. Once somebody got to your website, what did they do? Where did they click? What vehicles did they look at? All of that becomes your downstream metrics for your GMB. Putting the two together is really the piece that allows you to understand what's going on and say, I made this post and it got me 4 emails or 4 phone calls or something like that. So the great thing, if you've never clicked into your Google My Business profile, and as I go through all of these slides right now, if you want to bring up your own Google My Business profile at business.google.com and log on in, we'll ask some questions during the Q&A section about what type of categories you guys are showing up for and things like that. So this first kind of bucket of your categories are, Google will say, here are all the searches that occurred. Here's the types of things that they were for. Branded is going to mean they involved your dealership name. Direct is going to be more kind of like that direct, I want phone numbers, I want something related to that. And discovery is a kind of broader search. Someone looking for a Chevy dealer near me, looking for an oil change, looking for new tires. That's kind of that discovery. It's a more general term, but you showed up for it. Types of searches is that broader bucket that GMB Insights will be reporting on. It will also then report on specific queries. So it will tell you all of the queries. How many people are searching just for your dealership name? I'll be curious of if anybody has someone who searches for both their dealership name and the address in the same search. People don't think that someone's going to write that much specific information, but I see that over and over. If that's what the person's thinking when they're like needing to find all of your dealership information in GMB. And then it will show you how many times your Google My Business profile showed up on the map compared to how many times it showed up in the search results. We all know that 50 people are going to search 50 different ways. So it's great that Google's going to give you both of these options so you have a holistic way to really understand where you're showing up with more and where your customers are really searching more. And finally, it's going to talk about the actions people are taking. Are they asking for directions? Are they clicking on all of your photos in your profile? Are they calling? Are they clicking on the website? All of those different buttons that your GMB profile has, Google will report on all of that.
Let me just interject really quickly here. So in the second category and the third category, Google has recently made some changes to advertising standards. And specifically, they've started to limit the amount of keywords that you can see that have triggered advertising searches. So I think in particular now, Google My Business queries and how people have found your business is even more important than ever because it's starting to be hidden in other Google products.
Yes. Anytime you can get Google to tell you data, you should be taking that and doing everything. Google is not going to give that up. And speaking of that, in your Google My Business, it will also tell you the specific zip codes that people are in when they're asking for driving directions to your store. It's a great place. I know Google is limiting some of the zip code targeting we can do right now, but it's a great place to start to understand where are the customers I'm targeting, and are there places that customers are wanting directions that you're not doing any sort of retargeting with. You can look at all those zip codes, draw yourself a radius around that and say, I'm actually getting a lot of people from 15 miles to the east of me. Maybe I should be dropping some retargeting radiuses on that because that's the third highest zip code for driving directions. So there's great, to what Anna was talking about earlier, there's great cross-function here of actual data that you can use in all of your other marketing channels and all of your other strategies if you know where to pull it from. Call tracking. So this is going to be my hot take for the time, and I would love anybody to try to tell me different on this, but this is kind of one of Google's, I'm going to give you half a solution and we're going to call it really pretty, but there are better things we should be doing. So what they did this last month is in October, released what they call this call history option for Google My Business. And that is basically every time somebody clicks on the call button from your Google My Business listing, it will actually redirect to a Google voice number. And then when that call gets made, Google pushes all of that tracking information into the Insights section of the Google My Business app. This is what the screenshot's going to be looking like within that app. Key to this is that Google, right now, Google is only putting that information in the Google My Business app. So if you're going to turn on this call tracking in Google My Business, you also need to have the app on your phone, actively in it and monitoring that information. Otherwise, if you're not going to go through all of that trouble, there is no point in turning on call tracking, because if you're going to track it and not doing anything with it, why are you turning it on? If you are a dealership who's never used a local call tracking number on your Google My Business profile before, this is the great place to start. And I understand this is why Google did it. It's a free entry into this whole idea of call tracking on Google My Business. Everybody should be doing it, but there are still some who don't, and this is a great way to get into that kind of conversation. Second, it's no cost, it's free. We all love a little bit of free, but the flip side of that though is because it's free, it has some limitations. Google's only going to retain the data for 45 days. So if you want to holistically look at a whole quarter worth of data for call tracking, do a quarter over quarter comparison, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to keep downloading that data from the app, storing it somewhere, and going through that. Second, it really still will only track when somebody clicks that button. And the thing of that is that that's only going to get you a subset of people who call the dealership. Because you're not going to get any one of those people who look at your GMB and then pick up the phone and dial it. If they are on their iPad at night, or they are on their computer during the day, they're going to look up that phone number and then punch it into their phone and dial, and you're not going to be able to really get a number or a tracking for any of those calls. Also, there's no way to listen to the calls. And this is one of those things that your dealership is never going to get better at being able to convert phone calls into appointments until you're listening and really coaching and making the phone call experience as best as it can be. There's a ton of recent studies that say phone calls are going to convert over to leads 3 to 4 times more likely than an actual email lead being submitted. but that's really can get higher and higher if you're listening to the calls and coaching around that. So what really should you be doing instead of turning that on? Use a local call tracking number to track all of the phone calls for all of your directories, not just Google My Business. One CTN, local CTN that has your local area code, it will not impact your organic ranking. Once again, using a call tracking number in all of your directories will not be a negative impact to your rankings, your keyword rankings, all of that organicness. For years, this was one of I think, Anna, it's got to be one of the biggest myths in SEO.
Yeah, well, people always hear NAP, right? They always hear consistency. You always got to have your name, address, and phone number be the same, same, same. What they're not thinking about is that sameness can be one call tracking number.
Yep. So you have all of your phone numbers on your website, but then really and truly, you should have an additional local call tracking number that gets used on all of your directories. So you have a great understanding about all the places I do my directory work, including Google My Business, which is the lion's share of that. You can listen, you can see, you can really quantify the effort your off-page work is. Any sort of local call tracking number is also going to integrate into your call tracking system. You want to look at all of your phone numbers, all of your phone calls in one place. This is going to be the way to do that. And it also then, like we said, going to have all of that listening so that you can really coach your team members and make it what it should be. So once we start looking at everything we just went over so far, is everything for that upstream. Now let's start talking about downstream success. And really, the only way you're going to see any sort of downstream success and quantify all the work you're doing and all those great strategies Anna just taught us about is by having UTM tags. I know you all have sat through Brian's boot camps for Google Analytics, so this may be new to you, or this may not be new to you, but I'm just going to walk through all the different types of pieces, what it's going to do, and why it's so important. So to start off here, your UTM tags for any of your Google My Business links should have 3 sections to them: source, medium, and then campaign. Source is going to tell you kind of that where people came from. Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever it would be. Everything related to GMB is going to have Google. Medium is going to be that broader, how did they get there? Was it organic because it's Google and it's organic? You'll also see CPC a lot of time for the medium for paid search. That's that kind of bucket. And then campaign is going to be where you're going to differentiate between all the different links on all of your Google My Business and see that holistic picture. And this is all about being able to use a link for your website button, a UTM link for your appointment button, a UTM link for every post for all the categories. You have a link on your website in your Google My Business, she needs a UTM tag because that's how you're going to know what's going on. So when we talk about that, to dive in more, your website button, that we recommend should have something around GMB and listing. Do you have your products and services or your appointment link app? That should say GMB appointment. GMB products and services should have that as well. More product posts, GMB product. Shockingly, it also is GMB_post. So this is really what you're trying to think about. Each link, each type of link on your Google My Business has a theme of what it's about. That is where you use that within your campaign post for your UTM tags. As I've gone through all of this, I'm going to ask everybody to bring up their own dealership Google My Business listing in a browser window right now, and how many of your links on your main profile page actually do have UTM tags. Let us know when we get into the question and answer section. So why bother with all of these UTM tags? UTM tags means that you get to be able to see the benefits and the web activity from that Google My Business post. You get to see all of that upstream data and see it tie right into downstream metrics and be able to say that post caused this activity to happen. How so? Real live example from a Google Analytics. You can see in here, because I have my campaign tagging done properly for all of my different parts of a Google My Business listing, I can see where all of those people came in and all of the time they spent on the site and everything else. And it may not be for some dealers a ton of users in any of these sessions, but take a little bit of trip with me. We're looking at this GMB menu link. 20 users spending almost 9 minutes on your website. If I can get 20 people to spend 9 minutes on a dealer website in a month, they're going to come back. They are there. We have brought them down the funnel. And that is like the most amazing thing. And oh, wait, they submitted a lead. Oh, wait, somebody who came to your dealership from your appointment link submitted a lead as well, on top of the almost 100 leads that got submitted from people who came just from your Google My Business main listing. So once you have all that UTM tagging, you can start to really build your own attribution and say, I did this post on this day, and this is what it got me. This is the activity. This is the holistic view that you're able to have. It also comes down into the assisted conversions. And this is that Google Analytics is really trying to start to help everybody and every user understand attribution more. So assisted conversions is, what is the activity that occurred before somebody submitted a lead, did a goal, thing like that. Your goals in Google Analytics, like Brian has taught us, are that counting of all the great things going on. And you want to always have your goals for your leads and your engagement. But you also want to know what happened before that drove some of this. So as we look at this example, we had 27 assisted conversions in the month from the GMB appointment link. So that means 27 people came to the website through the GMB appointment link, came back to the website within the 30 days, and then submitted a lead. Google says now there are 24 touch points and 19 of them are digital before you're selling that car. This is where you start to understand what Anna was talking about. When you make Google My Business the actual kind of like part of a channel and not just that thing in the search results, it becomes a really amazing driving of traffic that's going to convert later on. It's like the email campaigns and things like that. Email may not sell a car that day, but it will sell the car within the next 30 days. Google My Business is the same way. It may not be the last way people visit your website, but it's bringing them in that first time. And then when they return around, you, with all your tagging, have everything that you want together. And so, because we like to be able to have something fun and excitement for everybody, please take a screenshot of this slide. Please copy down this URL, as that we've now created a GMB post UTM builder. And what this is really going to do is that it has laid out all of the pieces you need to make your own UTM tags for all of your posts. You put in your campaign name, you put in your dealership URL, it will populate a full, complete UTM tag for you. And that's where we want to try to be helpful with this, because we understand how great a UTM tag, it's such a little thing, does so much. We also know how much people can, without like meaning to, screw up that UTM tag. And you want it to be something that can actually drive all that data, because if you have a screwed up UTM tag, you cannot fix it and get clean data back. Also too, if you guys come and visit our booth right before we get into the Q&A, come visit the virtual booth for Synchro in the next couple of days or in the next day or so for this conference. We're actually doing some Google My Business audits right now and have free audits for anybody who comes to the booth and says, you listen to Colleen and Anna, and now I would like my Google My Business audit. Please come get all of those today, because we do fully believe in like such an amazing potential for this and want it to be something that everybody can take advantage of and see the data. Because it's one thing to have it and it's another thing to be able to see, I did the thing and it was worth it.